I'll never forget that moment. It was supposed to be a regular family dinner, just like any other. But when my uncle, with his usual smug grin, made that comment, I had no idea how much it was going to change everything. The whole room laughed, everyone. Except for Lily. And my uncle didn't even see it coming. He thought it was just a joke. Until someone stood up, saluted, and dropped a bombshell that left him speechless. That's when everything shifted. It was a typical family gathering, the kind where everyone's been looking forward to the same familiar faces, the same old jokes, and the same chaos that comes with having a big family. My childhood home, a place that was always filled with noise and laughter, now seemed quieter. My mother was in the kitchen, fussing over the food, while my father and the rest of the guys sat around the living room cracking jokes and drinking beer. I felt a mix of nostalgia and unease. It had been a while since we all sat together like this. Sure, it was supposed to be fun, but there was always this undercurrent of tension, mostly between Uncle Dave and Lily. Uncle Dave was the oldest of my mom's brothers, a guy who always had something to say about everything. You know the type, the loud one who doesn't hold back, even when it means being rude. And then there was Lily, my cousin, only a few years older than me, but she always felt like she was fighting an uphill battle just to be taken seriously. Lily had always been strong, way stronger than most of the guys in our family, but for some reason, they never seemed to notice. They saw her as the girl who could clean boots and maybe carry heavy things around, but not much more. And it wasn't just my uncle. It was the whole damn family. They treated her like she was invisible, like her hard work meant nothing. I was in the corner of the room, trying to avoid being dragged into yet another argument, but it wasn't easy. The air in that room always felt thick with old family traditions, things we never questioned because, well, they were just the way things were. And I had no idea how much those traditions were about to be challenged by a single moment. The dinner was in full swing. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the smell of home-cooked food made it feel like everything was normal. But then, as if it were nothing, Uncle Dave dropped his usual comment, "She's only here because she knows how to clean boots." The room went quiet for a second, and then everyone laughed. But Lily didn't laugh. I could see it in her eyes. She was hurt. You could feel it in the way she tensed up, trying not to show it. She'd spent years proving herself, first in school, then in the military, but none of it mattered to Uncle Dave. I looked around, and everyone else just went along with it. Uncle Dave didn't even realize what he had said. It was just another one of his careless jokes. He probably thought he was being funny. But for Lily, it felt like a slap in the face. I could tell that, deep down, she was done. Done with being the butt of jokes. Done with fighting for respect. And that's when I knew things were about to change, but I never imagined how much. How in one moment, everything would shift, and Uncle Dave, the loudmouth who always had something to say, would find himself speechless. As soon as my uncle's words hung in the air, I could feel the shift. At first, there was that awkward pause. The kind that always comes after one of Uncle Dave's more cutting comments. But then the laughter followed, loud and careless, like it was just another joke in a long line of jokes that had been passed around at these family dinners for years. The problem was, it wasn't funny. Not to me, not to Lily, and deep down, I think a part of Uncle Dave knew that, even if he didn't show it. He was too busy basking in the approval of the rest of the family to care about the effect his words had. Uncle Dave had always been the loud, proud one in the family. He was the guy who'd been in the military and had spent most of his life working hard to build up his image as someone who was tough, someone who could get things done. But there was a part of him that had a tendency to belittle others, especially when they weren't as strong as he thought they should be. And in his mind, Lily had always fallen into that category. She was the girl who did the grunt work, the girl who knew how to polish boots and clean up after everyone else. That was all he saw. He never bothered to look past the surface. He never cared about the struggles Lily had faced in the military, never acknowledged the sacrifices she had made just to get where she was. Lily had always been the underdog in our family, even though she was tougher than most of the men around her. She had earned her place in the military, worked her way up, and proved herself time and time again. But Uncle Dave wasn't impressed. To him, she wasn't even worth a second glance. He saw her as just another woman who was there to clean to cook, to fill the roles he expected her to. It frustrated me, but at the same time, I had learned to just accept it. That's how things were with Uncle Dave. He was the king of the castle, and we all had to play by his rules, but this time, something in Lily snapped. I could see it in the way her jaw clenched, the way she stood a little straighter, as if she was trying to hold herself together but also ready to explode at any moment. She didn't laugh like the rest of us. Instead, she sat there in silence, her hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly I thought her knuckles might pop out of her skin. I knew her well enough to understand that she wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. As the laughter died down and the conversation shifted, I watched Lily carefully. She wasn't looking at Uncle Dave anymore. She wasn't even looking at anyone in particular. She was staring at the table, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. I could tell she was working through something in her mind, calculating her next move. The tension in the room was unbearable, but nobody spoke up. Nobody dared to challenge Uncle Dave, not even my dad, who usually would have said something. That's when I saw the flicker in Lily's eyes, the small glint of resolve. That told me everything I needed to know. I had seen that look before, the look that meant she wasn't backing down. And that's when I realized how much this moment meant to her. It wasn't just about the joke. It wasn't just about Uncle Dave's disrespect. It was about everything she had fought for, everything she had proven to herself and to the world. All the years of working twice as hard to get half the credit. All the nights she spent training. All the times she pushed herself when others said she couldn't do it. All the moments when she had to swallow her pride and keep going, even when everyone underestimated her. Lily had done more than enough to deserve respect. She had earned her place, not only in this family but in the military as well. And yet, here she was, once again being reduced to a punchline, a joke. It wasn't just a matter of pride anymore. It was a matter of standing up for herself. I knew this was her breaking point. The comment wasn't just another insult. It was the final straw in a long list of being overlooked, underestimated, and disregarded. She wasn't going to let Uncle Dave, or anyone else for that matter, continue to see her as just the girl who polished boots. I looked around the table, trying to gauge how the rest of the family was reacting. My cousin Sarah was the only one who seemed to notice Lily's silence. She was a little younger, but even she could sense the change in the air. My dad sat there, stone-faced, not saying anything, but I knew he was uncomfortable. Uncle Dave, on the other hand, seemed completely oblivious to the fact that his joke had landed with a thud. He was too busy making small talk with my brother, who was probably too busy nodding along to notice the tension, but Lily was done with the silence. I could feel the anger building up inside her, and I knew it wasn't going to stay hidden for much longer. And that's when it happened, when everything changed. I didn't know what she was going to do next, but I could tell it was going to be big. Lily wasn't the type to back down, not anymore. And I wasn't sure if Uncle Dave even knew what he was about to set in motion with one careless comment. But I knew one thing for sure. The family was about to find out exactly who Lily Vega was. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point. The laughter had died down, but the weight of Uncle Dave's words hung in the air like a cloud. No one seemed to know what to do. The rest of the family continued on, pretending that everything was fine, but I could tell that they all felt the change. Even though Uncle Dave didn't realize it, his words had struck a chord, and the one person who wasn't going to just sit there and take it anymore was Lily. I could see the shift in her. The way her body language had changed, the tension in her shoulders, the way she sat up straighter in her chair. It was like she was holding something back, trying to control the anger building up inside her. The silence around the table was deafening now, with everyone seemingly unsure of how to act. I could feel it too, the anticipation. Everyone was waiting for Lily to do something. The air was thick with it. And then, without warning, she stood up. It was like a spark had been lit. The room went completely still as Lily stood up, her eyes locked onto Uncle Dave. She didn't look angry, not in the way I expected, but there was something different in her gaze, something steely and focused. The kind of look that said she had made a decision, and it wasn't one that could be undone. Uncle Dave, for a brief moment, looked confused. He must have thought she was just going to take it, just like always. Maybe he thought she'd stay quiet and let it go, like she had for years. But Lily wasn't that girl anymore. She wasn't going to let herself be dismissed or ridiculed just because of her gender. She had worked too hard for that. All of a sudden, it felt like all of her years of silent endurance had led up to this very moment. "You're wrong," Lily said, her voice steady but firm. There was no anger in her tone, just the truth. "I'm not here to clean boots or be your joke. I'm here because I've earned it. I've earned my place just like anyone else." The words landed like a slap, and the room fell even quieter. "Uncle." Dave looked stunned, and I don't think he knew how to react at first. It was as if the whole room had collectively held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Lily's words weren't just for Uncle Dave, they were for the entire family. For everyone who had ever brushed her aside or doubted her. It was a declaration, not just of her worth, but of her place in this family and in the world. She wasn't going to stay in the background anymore. Uncle Dave finally found his voice, but it wasn't the confident, boastful tone he usually carried. "Lily, come on," he said, laughing nervously, trying to brush it off. "I was just joking, all right? Relax." But Lily wasn't having it. She didn't even flinch at his attempt to downplay the situation. She looked at him squarely and said, "It's not a joke. You've been doing this for years, and I'm tired of it. Tired of being treated like I'm less than you, just because I'm a woman. Tired of being dismissed." I felt a wave of pride wash over me, mixed with something else, something deeper, like the realization that Lily wasn't just standing up to Uncle Dave anymore. She was standing up to all of us. To everything we had allowed to happen without question. We'd all played our part in keeping the status quo, in letting Uncle Dave's harsh words slide, in letting him get away with treating Lily as less than. And now, for the first time, Lily wasn't just taking it. She was fighting back. She turned toward the door, her voice calm but full of purpose. "You might want to remember that, Uncle Dave. Because I'm not that girl anymore. I'm not here to clean your boots or make you feel better about yourself. I'm here to make my own path, and it's time you saw that." With that, she walked out of the room, her footsteps heavy with determination. I don't think anyone knew what to do at first. The silence in the room was almost unbearable. Uncle Dave sat there, his face flushed with confusion, frustration, and maybe even a hint of guilt. For once, he was at a loss for words, and I think that was when the real turning point came, not when Lily spoke, but when Uncle Dave couldn't dismiss her. He couldn't laugh it off or make her feel small. For the first time, Lily had made it impossible for him to treat her as anything other than what she truly was, a woman of strength, a woman of value, and a woman who wouldn't be overlooked any longer. For a brief moment, I thought Uncle Dave might say something to apologize or to smooth things over, but instead, he stayed quiet. I think deep down, he knew that the time for jokes had passed. And for the first time, I saw my cousin in a completely new light, stronger, more confident, and completely in control of her own story. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but one thing was clear, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a change that none of us saw coming. Lily had just taken the first step toward something bigger, something that would affect all of us, whether we liked it or not. And I had no idea how much it would shake the family. To its core, the next few moments felt like time had slowed down. Lily's words still hung in the air like an unspoken challenge, and the room felt thick with tension. Everyone was still processing what had just happened, but nobody moved, nobody spoke. It was as if we were all waiting for something to happen, as if we were waiting for the inevitable shift in the family dynamic. After Lily walked out of the room, there was a heavy silence that settled over us. Uncle Dave, who usually filled every room with his loud voice and unfiltered opinions, was uncharacteristically quiet. His face, usually full of confidence and bravado, now wore an expression I'd never seen before. It was a mixture of shock, frustration, and maybe a little bit of regret. He was used to being in control, used to having the last word, but this time, something had changed. Lily's defiance, her refusal to accept the role they had always tried to push her into, had shaken him. For a moment, I thought he might get up and follow her, maybe try to apologize or explain himself. But instead, he sat there, frozen. It was like the tables had turned, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. Uncle Dave had always been the one who called the shots in the family, and now, in the wake of Lily's words, I could tell that the power dynamics had shifted. He wasn't the one in control anymore, and he didn't know how to regain that control, Just as the room was about to descend into awkward murmurs and side glances, the sound of a knock at the door interrupted the tension. At first, nobody moved. But then the door swung open, and in walked a figure we all recognized but hadn't seen in years. It was Commander Vega. I froze, completely caught off guard. Why was he here? I hadn't expected to see him tonight, and neither had anyone else. Commander Vega had been a part of our lives for years. He had worked closely with my family, especially with Lily, but it had been a long time since anyone had heard from him. His sudden appearance in the middle of this heated family moment felt like an omen, like something big was about to unfold. Commander Vega was a tall, imposing figure, dressed in full military uniform. His presence alone commanded respect. As he stepped into the room, every eye turned to him, and the room fell even quieter. It wasn't just because of his rank or his stature, it was the way he moved, the way he carried himself. He exuded a quiet authority that made you take notice. Lily had turned back to face the door, and when she saw him, something in her expression softened, just slightly. It was like she recognized the weight of the moment, too. Commander Vega had known her from her time in the military, and if there was anyone who truly understood her worth, it was him. He had seen her struggle, seen her fight for every inch of respect, and he knew exactly who she was. Without a word, Commander Vega walked into the room and straight up to Lily. He stood tall in front of her, and for a moment, there was a silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Then, in a gesture that left everyone stunned, he saluted her. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Lieutenant Vega," he said, his voice steady and filled with respect. "Thank you for training our entire unit. Without your dedication and leadership, we wouldn't be where we are today." The words hit like a thunderclap. My heart skipped a beat as I watched Uncle Dave's face fall, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. He had never seen this side of Lily, had never truly understood who she had become. In that one moment, everything changed. The man who had dismissed her for years, who had reduced her to a punchline, now had to face the reality that she wasn't the person he thought she was. Commander Vega's words hung in the air, and the rest of the family was just as stunned as Uncle Dave. For a brief moment, no one knew what to say. But it wasn't just Lily who was affected by what was happening, it was the entire family. Everyone, from my mother to my cousins, was now forced to see Lily in a new light. She wasn't just a girl who cleaned boots. She wasn't the person they had kept in the background, always overlooked and underestimated. She was Lieutenant Vega. A leader who had earned her place, who had fought for every ounce of respect, and who had now received the recognition she deserved. Uncle Dave didn't say anything at first. He sat there, staring at the commander, at Lily, and then slowly, his gaze shifted down to the table. I could see his hands tightening into fists, his face flushed with shame. For the first time, he realized how wrong he had been, how much he had misjudged Lily all these years. And what made it even more powerful was the fact that the respect she had earned came from someone outside the family. It wasn't just us seeing her differently, it was someone from the military, someone who held authority, recognizing her worth. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride for Lily in that moment. She had stood up for herself, and in doing so, she had forced all of us to confront our own biases, our own failures, to see her for who she truly was. It wasn't just Uncle Dave who had to come to terms with his mistake, it was all of us. The room was still, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were all seeing each other clearly. Lily wasn't the person we had made her out to be. She was stronger, smarter, and far more capable than any of us had given her credit for. And in that moment, we all knew it. Uncle Dave knew it. The rest of the family knew it. And most importantly, Lily knew it. The silence in the room after Commander Vega's words lingered long after he had spoken. Even though he had left as quickly as he arrived, the impact of what had just transpired hadn't fully settled in. Everyone was still processing the shock, still reeling from the sudden turn of events. Uncle Dave sat motionless, his face a mixture of disbelief and embarrassment, but for the first time, he didn't have anything to say. It was clear that the foundations of the family dynamic had shifted. In that single moment, and no one knew how to address it. I watched Lily closely, noticing how her posture had changed. There was a quiet strength in her now, a sense of peace that hadn't been there before. I could see the pride in her eyes, but also a touch of sadness. She had carried the weight of others' assumptions for so long, and finally, she had received the validation she had worked so hard for. Yet, there was something bittersweet about it. She had to fight for this recognition. It hadn't been freely given, and that fact wasn't lost on her. The rest of us sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. My mother, who had been silent throughout the evening, was the first to break the quiet. She looked at Lily with a softness I hadn't seen in a long time. "Lily," she began, her voice quiet but filled with meaning, "I didn't know. I had no idea." The words felt like an apology, though it wasn't explicit. My mother had always been a supporter of Lily, but it took this moment, this powerful revelation, to truly open her eyes to the kind of person Lily had become. My mother had seen Lily as the girl who was just part of the family, but now she saw her for who she truly was, a leader, someone with depth and strength that went beyond anything she had ever imagined. Lily looked at her mother, her expression softening. "It's okay, Mom," she said, her voice calm. "I've been trying to show everyone, not just you, but all of us, who I really am." There was no bitterness in her voice, no anger. She had moved beyond that. It wasn't about getting an apology or forcing anyone to recognize her worth. It was about claiming her own space, her own identity, without needing validation from anyone else. For Lily, this wasn't just a personal victory, it was a victory for all the women in the family who had been overlooked or reduced to stereotypes. It was a lesson in self-empowerment. Uncle Dave, still sitting at the table, finally spoke. His voice was quieter than usual, but it carried an unfamiliar humility. "I didn't mean. I never meant to," he started, trailing off as though trying to find the right words. The apology was weak, almost forced, but I could see that he understood the weight of his mistake. Maybe it wasn't just the words he had spoken about Lily. Maybe it was everything he had ever said, everything he had ever done to undermine her. And for the first time, he was confronted with the consequences of his actions. His pride, which had always been so solid, seemed to crumble before our eyes. But the damage had been done. Words, once spoken, can never be completely erased. Lily didn't respond to Uncle Dave right away. She didn't need to. The silence that followed his words spoke louder than any apology he could offer. She had already made her point. She had already shown us who she was. The validation she needed wasn't going to come from him or anyone else, it was coming from herself. This moment was not about forgiveness. It was about growth. I could feel a shift in the entire family. This was a wake-up call, not just for Uncle Dave, but for everyone else. For the first time, we all had to confront our biases, our assumptions, and our own failures in how we saw each other. Uncle Dave wasn't the only one who had underestimated Lily. We had all contributed in some way, whether consciously or unconsciously, to the way she had been treated. We had all let her prove herself time and time again without truly recognizing her. And now, we had no choice but to see her for what she truly was, an equal, a leader, a force to be reckoned with. I felt a pang of regret, but also a deep sense of pride for my cousin. She had handled this moment with such grace and poise. She hadn't sought revenge or even recognition. She had simply spoken her truth, and in doing so, she had changed everything. I realized that, in many ways, she had been teaching us all a lesson without even trying. She had shown us the power of standing up for yourself, the importance of believing in your own worth, even when others refused to see it. As the night wore on, the conversation began to shift. People started to speak to Lily differently. There was a new respect in the way they looked at her, in the way they spoke to her. It wasn't just because of what Commander Vega had said, it was because Lily had made them realize something they had been blind to for far too long. The respect she had earned wasn't just from her military rank or her accomplishments, it was from the strength she had shown in that room. She had claimed her place, not just in the family, but in the world. And no one could take that away from her. Uncle Dave, for all his bluster, was a changed man. I didn't know if he would ever fully understand the depth of his mistake, but in that moment, it didn't matter. He had seen Lily for who she really was, and that was enough. For the first time, I felt like we were all on equal ground. There were no more jokes at Lily's expense, no more belittling comments, no more assumptions about her worth. She had fought for her place, and now, we all had to respect it. As the night came to a close, I felt a sense of peace. The family had changed in a way that I hadn't expected. And it was all because of Lily's courage to stand up, to speak her truth, and to make sure that she was seen, not just by Uncle Dave, but by all of us. She had taught us all something powerful that evening, about strength, about self-worth, and about the importance of standing up for who you are, no matter what anyone else thinks.